In this video, we'll tell you how to discover your God-given purpose.
I want to be on this topic of purpose, this topic that you guys have been on, this theme. And as soon as Pastor let me know what you guys are on, I had this word drop in my heart, and I wanted to share it with you. So we're going to jump around a little bit, have a little fun. I want to start with this idea of purpose. I know you've been talking a little bit about this idea of, enjoying God, enjoying Father, and Father enjoying you. But I want to talk about this idea of why sometimes we don't get into that enjoyment. Why sometimes we don't get into that place, that sweet spot of life. And I want to talk about that sweet spot because I think it's so important, because it doesn't matter really what you're doing. It matters the heart behind of what you're doing. Ayo. And so I read this story in Judges chapter 11, and I want to kind of bring it to your attention. It's a guy by the name of Jephthah. It's actually, if you pronounce it in Hebrew, it's Iphthah. And this was one of the judges in the book of Judges. He actually became the 9th judge. And so I want to give you the very first verse, because this is what struck me one day. And I was like, this is powerful, because so many people live this way. And it says this. It says, "Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a brave warrior." Some of your translations will say mighty man of valor. So Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a prostitute. And I read that and I just paused, because that in and of itself is our society. We have many people that are living on the back end or on the other side of the comma, and God's asking us to live on the front side of the comma. So look at somebody just for a moment and say, it's time to live on the front side. The front side of the comma. Live life before the comma. It's amazing to me. It's almost like Jesus himself could come to some people physically back on this earth and say, you are a mighty man of valor, or you are an anointed daughter of God, or you are a powerful person, or you have great things in your life. And still yet, when he walked away, we would believe the back end. We would put the but in front of what God said. I believe Jesus physically could come here. We could be like, wow, it's the Son of God. It's the King of Kings. And yet not truly believe what he's saying, because we're so married to what's on the back end of the comma. Somebody could sit there and they could tell you for weeks and months that you're called, that you're anointed, that you got great plans in your life, that God's got something for you. But yet you believe the comma, but I was molested. But I wasn't wanted by my parents. But I was an addict. But I wasn't raised in church. But I don't know enough. But, and we have all these buts in the way. Well, every time I come to your church, I'm talking about butts. It's just weird, man. I don't get it. It just happens. It's so natural. Always about butts. I don't know what it is. It's a good place to do it. I want to say get your butt out of the way, but it's like this thing, I don't want to talk about butts, so let's not talk about butts. Let's just talk about living before the comma. Now, Jephthah the Gileadite was a brave warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. I wonder today what your thing is after the comma. But I haven't been in church a long time. But I don't know as much as the next guy. But I have issues. Well, if you got issues, welcome to the club. If you don't have issues, you're lying. That's just a straight up lie. How many of you got issues? At that time, every hand went up. But if you ask it without saying that, If you ask it without saying that, it's like 4 hands go up. Then you got to do it again. How many got issues? Oh, I got issues. I don't want to be called out. But look what happens. It says, so Gilead was the father of Jephthah, and Gilead's wife bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, you shall not have an inheritance in the father's house, because you are the son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob and hung out with worthless and unprincipled men. In other words, the Bible calls that the riffraff. The riffraff gathered around Jephthah and went out, and they went out in these raids, and they stole, and they robbed from people, and they caused a bunch of problems. Isn't it amazing what happens when you don't know your purpose, when you lose sight of the purpose before the comma, that all of a sudden we lose sight of our priorities. Yeah. Isn't it amazing that what happened? We've seen it in other people. Some of us have seen it ourselves. That when we grab a hold of what's before the comma, all of a sudden our priorities shift. All of a sudden, our mindset shift. All of a sudden, it's like, no, I can't hang with that people anymore. I can't do those things anymore. And I can't go that direction anymore because there's something that's beginning to come alive on the inside of me. There's something that's beginning to awaken on the inside of me. There's something that's calling me. Even if I got to be by myself, I got to go in this direction, you know. Even if other people don't understand it, I've got to lean this way. I've got to go this way because there's something before the comma that's a little more important than after it. So he goes into these raids and he's hanging out with all the riffraff and he's doing all these things. But the before the comma, even in the midst of all that stuff, here was some of you need to get. Even while he was in the midst of hanging with the riffraff, even when he was out there doing the raids, doing the stuff, what was said before the comma never changed. What was declared to him before the comma, it didn't change. It was still the same. The mighty man of valor. The mighty warrior. You know, you're a lot stronger than what you think. Yes. You're a lot more powerful than what you realize. Ayo. So we got this story that's going on, and Jephthah's out there, he's doing his thing, he's doing the raids, he's doing all kind of crazy stuff, and all of a sudden, trouble shows up back at his home, and now they need him. Now they need his skill set. Now they need who he is. Hey, we have problems. We need you to come back and help us out. Isn't it funny how people, they want you when they need you? Right? How that works, right? I need what you can do, so now I want you. Ayo. And so this idea begins to rise up. Now, I want you to put this in our terms, right? Our day, the way we live. I want you to think about this for a moment. Because when you have people that begin to call you out and begin to say something to you and begin to remove you or distance you from the before the comma, it usually has a hint of truth to it. A lot of times it's not even a lie. Yeah, but you're a bastard kid. That might be true. That might have some bearings to it. You might not have had a father. But it doesn't mean it's what's before the comma. Amen. Pastor Doug back home, he has this thing that he used to battle with all the time because he wasn't raised in church. He really didn't start getting involved with church until he was in high school. And he always felt like he was behind everybody else. Well, that was the after the comma. But I'm not as spiritual as you. I'm not as spiritual as other people. I don't have all that foundational stuff. And until he learned before the comma is what mattered the most. You are called, you're anointed, you're a phenomenal teacher in the Word. So to go to Doug and say, hey, dude, you know what? You didn't have any, your childhood was not spiritual like mine was. There's some truth to that. You hear what I'm saying? Yeah. See, what I'm saying is that the enemy, or sometimes people will be used by the enemy to throw words your way that actually have a bent of truth. Don't be like freaking out by that. Just be like, okay, yeah, that's right. I didn't have a father. That's right. I was an addict. That's right. I was an alcoholic. That's right. I was poor. That's right. I was a gossiper. That's right. I was. But I refuse to live after the comma now, and now I'm going to before the comma. Matthew tells us very good, just agree with your adversary. So if he calls you an idiot, be like, okay, I'm an idiot, but I'm coming over here before the comma, and now I'm going to anoint the Son of God. Are you with me today? Yeah. How could you be an idiot if you really do have the mind of Christ? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out here. And so learning to live before the comma is what matters the most. See, the enemy only has so much power when we give it to him, right? When we say, oh, that's right. My dad left me and abandoned me when I was 13. This is my story. So that means I really can't do anything with my life. I had to file. This isn't my one, but this is another story. I mean, it's like, I had to file bankruptcy. I'll never get into the blessings of God. I mean, come on now. I know these are simple things, but these are where we live. The after the comma, we tend to live after the comma much more than we live before the comma. We actually marry to after the comma. We're so inundated with what's after the comma. Like I said, if Jesus himself showed up, you still would have a difficult time believing before the comma. But they came to him, they came to Jephthah, and they're like, hey, we need you now. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. There's the interesting part. Mighty man of valor. Mighty actually means a hero, one who behaves boldly, and a warrior. Valor actually means force, strength, and courage. So here God is calling him a hero long before he ever stepped into being a hero. He says he's calling him a bold warrior long before, really. I mean, he might have knew how to fight when he was younger. I'm sure he did. But he never stepped into that public arena of being a warrior, right? And being seen as a mighty warrior until the need arose for his skill set. Force, strength, and courage. Here's what's so cool about it. Many times, if not all the time, God will speak to you before the comma. He'll speak something to you that is before the comma that you will have a tough time believing. Yeah. That I will have a tough time believing. Because you won't feel what he's speaking. It's not like you're feeling like, that's right, I'm anointed. What's up? I got this thing. Yeah, got your gloves on. You're like boxing. You got it going, man. You're feeling, you know how you feel the anointing. Right? You feel the glory. And when you feel the glory, like when we're at church together, and then you go home, and you're not feeling the glory, you feel like punching somebody, right? You feel like wrestling somebody down. You feel like, did you just say that to me? You know, that kind of thing. We're not feeling it. But what happens when God speaks it, it's typically, more times than not, it's in a place where you least feel it. When he says that you're a son of God, and the first time you begin to hear that, you feel more like a bastard than you ever felt in your entire life. You feel more abandoned than you've ever felt. You feel more rejection. You feel more unaccepted. And you're hearing for the first time, or you're starting to grab a hold of this idea that you're a son or a daughter. That you're accepted at the family table, the family room. No. You're not like, yeah, that's right, I belong. Well, walking up to Dan's seat here and be like, get out, man, that's my seat. You don't feel that. More times than not, you're like, no, that's okay. I'll stay back here in the dark back room. I don't want to come to the family room. And we least feel it when he speaks it. Think about these things with Jephthah. Maybe somebody can relate to this. I don't know. I know I have. Here were the strikes against him after the comma, the things after the comma. Mother of a prostitute. Now, it's not like you don't want to walk around wearing a T-shirt. I mean, these aren't things that's like, hey, guess what? Mother of a harlot. I mean, my mother is a harlot. I mean, you don't want to wear these kind. First of all, it doesn't work very well in family reunions. It'd be kind of awkward. So you have mother was a prostitute. That in and of itself is enough, but let's just go a little further. Then you got a life filled with illegitimacy, which really is a mindset and a belief that you simply don't belong, that you don't have a place. But let's just go a little bit further, because maybe somebody in here will relate to some of these things. I mean, and then you got this thing of abandonment that even when he was driven out, get this, he was driven out by his brothers, his real dad didn't even come after him. Why wouldn't dad come chase after me? He's my real dad. He didn't come after me. So now you got a heart that's full of abandonment. No wonder he would go hang out with the people who had similar mindsets.
Yeah, that's right.
Ayo. Can we go a step further? Just a couple more. I mean, she got mother of a prostitute. If that wasn't bad enough, you got illegitimacy. If that wasn't bad enough, you got abandonment. If that wasn't bad enough, now we have this life filled with rejection. And you know, maybe you don't know, but I'm sure some of you do, that people who are really steeped, and I'm not talking about just being rejected one time. I'm talking about a cloud of rejection over them. These are the people that reject you, or maybe you're one, you reject others before you're rejected because there's this cloud of rejection. So you actually live life like this. I need a 10-foot radius. And I'm not talking about the people who just don't like people. I'm talking about, like I'm peopled out kind of thing, right? I'm talking about you live this way. I'm rejecting you before you're rejecting me. And you have a lot of surface relationships, but once it starts going to a real spot, then all of a sudden the hand comes, they got too real. Too much too soon, back off. You're like the Grinch, one step at a time. That's what rejection does. And then we go to this other thing where, he was thrown out of his home and there was injustice. Because here's the interesting part. The brothers said, you don't get an inheritance. You don't get an inheritance because your mother is a prostitute. But the blessing in that day came through the father.
Yeah.
So now we got injustice going on. Now we got fairness issues. Now we got entitlement issues. Now we got these things of saying, I should have an inheritance, but I'm being driven out of my home. Maybe I don't belong. And so you got this cloud of, come on, think about it, abandonment, rejection. You got fairness issues, you got anger, you got frustration, and now you got a guy that's leaving. He's running away from the very place that he deserves. Ayo. And so now we have somebody who has been rejected by authorities, his dad. We have somebody that now is living in economic recession. We have somebody else who has, according to Deuteronomy chapter 23, has potential of being rejected by the house of God. Glad we're not living under that law anymore. Amen. Ayo. Why am I bringing this up? It's because this is the stuff that's after the comma. This is the stuff that we get in the way of what's before the comma. And majority of the people, when I go to them and I ask them, what is God saying to you? Very seldom do I get, I don't know. And if you don't know, we can help you find out. Your pastors can help you find out. But the more times than not, people are sensing or feeling what Father has spoken, whether it's through the Word or whether it's personally or through somebody else. But we don't hang on to that because our belief system is so embedded with what's after the comma. The core of who we are. That seems to be more important than the other. This is why I say some of you are going to shift. You're going to shift. There's almost a new phrase that's going to come in your life. No, I'm going to start living before the comma. What are you saying, Father? I'm going to start living life before the comma. What are you saying about this? What are you saying about me? What are you saying about me? I'm going to start living life before the comma. How many say, I'm making a shift this morning? I'm making a shift this morning, living life before the comma. You see, what's amazing is that sometimes we look at our limitations, we look at these things, and we think they're God's limitations. But our limitations are never God's limitations. If that's the case, we wouldn't have the disciples following Jesus. They could have very easily said, oh, no, I got too many issues. I got all this stuff. But they had something in their heart that says, I'm going to live life before the comma. I know there's probably somebody here who's been through some stuff, probably in some stuff right now. But there's a before the comma for you. I said, there's a before the comma for you. There is. I'll give you something else. Limitations are meant to be broken. They're meant to be broken. Limitations. Maybe somebody's in here and you're after the comma is like, well, that's the way my family has always done it. But there's something inside of your heart that is saying, I want to do it differently. I want to do something different. My wife and I, when we first got married, we made a decision that we were going to do something different. We were not going to allow the divorce and the affairs and all the stuff to continue in our bloodline. We made a decision 27 years ago that we were going to start transitioning from a generational curse and a generational sin to a generational blessing. It wasn't easy. It wasn't always hunky-dory. But I got to tell you today, I'm proud to say, not me, but I'm thankful that our son today is a worship leader in the house of God. He's serving the Lord, him and his wife, and it's just a phenomenal thing to see after 27 years. That you can say, well, it could have very easily been the same. Well, that's just the way my grandpa did it. That's just the way my dad did it. That's just my lot in life. That's after the comma. Somebody's got to step up and say, I'm ready to transition and become a generational blessing maker. See, that kind of stuff is before the comma. So what does this have anything to do with? Oh, it smells so good. You see, I haven't eaten enough this week. And I felt bad because the guys have starved, all week. I just want to read you something. Can I read you something real quick? Sure. Some of you may have seen this. This man right here. We talk about after the comma. At age 5, his father died. Age 16, he quit school. Age 17, he already lost 4 jobs. At age 18, he got married. Between the ages of 18 and 22, he was a railroad conductor and failed. He joined the Army and washed out there. He applied for law school. He was rejected. He became an insurance salesman and failed again. At age 19, he became a father. At age 20, his wife left him and took their baby daughter. He became a cook and a dishwasher in a small cafe. He failed in an attempt to kidnap his own daughter, and eventually he convinced his wife to return home. That's one way to do it, I guess. I'm getting my family back together. At age 65, he retired. On the first day of retirement, he received a check from the government for $105. He felt that the government was saying that he couldn't provide for himself. He decided to commit suicide. Life wasn't worth living anymore. He failed too much. He sat under a tree writing his will, but instead he wrote what he have accomplished with his life. He realized there was much more than he hadn't done yet. There was one thing he could do better than anyone he knew, and that was how to cook. So he borrowed $87 against his check and bought and fried up some chicken using his recipe and went door to door to sell them. Remember, at age 65, he was ready to turn it all in. But at age 88, Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, his empire was worth $1 billion. Wow. Moral of the story is, learn to live life before the comma and not what's after it. You see, I love chicken. I went to a church one time to minister back in the 90s, and I ate a chicken leg. And I offended one of the church moms there. She goes, "What are you doing, son?" I said, "I'm just eating." She goes, "You better shine that bone." So I had to learn to shine the bone. Am I right? So I didn't want to offend anybody today. So I think it's time to shine a bone. I'm so glad I had a small breakfast this morning. I'm already feeling the bloat. You want a bite? Let me serve you, Pastor. Would you like a bite, sir? Would you like some? I am not feeling the love around here, ma'am. Y'all made me eat all week long. But it is really good. You know what's amazing? Somebody's going to need a vacuum, but I mean, for years, I don't normally preach with my mouth full, but for years, people have been enjoying this food. For years, people have been blessed by this. And there was one dude a long time ago that sat under a tree and wrote this down. There's one thing I can do, maybe better than anyone else, or maybe better than my family has done, or better than what I've done up to this point. And out of that became a billionaire. Out of that, I don't even think his goal was to be a billionaire. He's gone to be with the Lord, probably getting ready for the great supper, but for generations, people have been blessed by this man's chicken. It may seem so small to you, but chicken saved his life. He found something that was before the comma. He found something others probably thought, why the heck are you going door to door? People aren't going to buy that. People aren't going to do that. And I promise you, when God speaks to you before the comma, you'll be hearing the same stuff. There's no way you can do that. There's no way you can live up to that. You're not really anointed. That was just some word you heard. You're not really called. That's just that's just church stuff. You can't be used by God. You don't have any history. There will always be those voices that begin to speak in your mind that would say, don't try that. It's been done, or it's never been done in Tennell. I've called this place next door, God said, a blessing for the generations to come, comma, but it was a rundown facility. That thing will never be used for anything great. You see, you can have a Tennell mindset, or you can have a heaven mindset.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. That's right. Sheesh. Come on.
You can have your family's upline mindset, or you can have heaven's mindset in your life. You see, because after the comma mindset, it says stuff like, it'll always be this way. This is the way it's always been done. That thing will never succeed. You will never succeed. You will never become. But before the mindset is, God already sees it as a success long before we do. God already sees you being utilized and advancing the kingdom long before you step into the place of understanding what that means. Can we stand on our feet this morning? I just feel like there needs to be some transition with maybe a mindset, maybe more. Let's just show some honesty in the house. God always moves when there's honesty. How many of you could honestly say by a show of hands, you've been living on the back end, the backside of the comma? If that's you, show of hands, let's put them up. Been living out the backside of comma. If today you're making your shift from living out of that to the other side of the comma, to the other side, I want you to put both hands in the air and just close your eyes just for a moment. We're choosing to live on the front side of the comma, Father. We're going to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for joining us at VC2, where we are real people meeting real needs with the reality of Christ. If you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss out on what's happening here at VC2. Also, check us out on Instagram and Facebook as VC2 Online.